Okay, hope everybody's doing well. Everybody's doing good. As you can see, I'm doing okay. Got my coffee, good. So I was having a discussion earlier today, which is probably yesterday. Um, I was talking with Peter, who I hadn't talked to in a long time or discussed. Actually, really never talked to him in much detail in a video. But anyways, I got to talk to Peter a little bit, and then Antonio came along, Antlog or something, and he was coming in with this logic, this reasoning, and I had to actually play the video back in order to understand what he was saying. And I hope Peter would do the same thing too, because Peter didn't know what he was didn't know what he was talking about. And you can see if you watch the video, it's like Peter saying what what's that? What does that mean? What did you say? I have no clue what you're talking about, he says. But anyway, so I wanted to try to run through it again. The idea, the logic is that, let's say you have a thing, something, and so there's two ways of looking at it, I suppose, is the immediate cause and the ultimate cause. But I think what Antonio was talking about would be the ultimate cause of why this thing is here. It could be anything. And, when I was a kid, somebody said, well, we have something instead of nothing. Otherwise, we wouldn't have anything, right? And I'm thinking, yeah, I guess so. But anyway, so we have this thing, and we can talk about the immediate cause, and we can also talk about the ultimate cause. In other words, what is the cause of everything? So, they like to say, well, we put in a God. Yeah, well, we believe that's what the evidence shows is God. But the question is what do they say the cause is? If the cause is not God, what is the cause? And they don't have an answer. They attack our position of a God, but they don't know what caused everything themselves. So that's one way of putting it. But it takes a while to understand, because we don't normally think that in those terms. We don't normally think in terms of the causality and logic and all that stuff. But when you're talking to, well, what was his name, Darth Dawkins or something, that's what he's getting at. Is that we're talking about a cause that is God, but then anything else is irrational, especially if you don't know what the cause is. It's illogical and irrational. You can't talk about anything unless you talk about what caused everything. And I like to use the evidence of energy that proves a greater energy, which proves infinite potential, all powerful. And they can do the same thing with wisdom. Wisdom, if you have any amount of wisdom, it comes from a greater wisdom, which comes from God, or which is God. Same thing with intent and purpose. If you have intent and purpose, there's a greater intent and purpose. So everything that we see, we can define as logical and rational and reasonable. There is the cause, who is logical, rational, and reasonable. So it's precept, I guess, gets a bad name, but a bad rap, not a bad name, from some people because they don't understand what the logic is. Because sometimes they'll say, well, it's the same thing for you when you claim a God. You can't know there's a God, you can't prove there's a God either. I've heard people say that. But on the contrary, is that energy proves there is a God. And we can prove there is a God. Because, if there's energy, it comes from a greater energy, not a lesser, not an equal amount of energy. If there's wisdom, it comes from a greater amount of wisdom, not an equal or lesser amount of wisdom. There's knowledge, there's a greater knowledge. So all these things point to an infinite potential, which is all-knowing, all-powerful, and eternal. And eternal is, people like to say, outside of time, or not limited by time, maybe, but he's not limited or not confined by time, not constricted by time, because he's the maker of time. And since he's the maker of everything, he's the maker of matter that dilates time and distance. So all the matter in the universe, in all the galaxies and black holes, are what dilates time and distance down to a measurable, quantifiable amount where physical things can take place, where we can exist as physical beings. But that's not to say that it's the only thing there is, obviously, because there's the maker of matter, who is, it takes energy and power to make matter, and that's evidence of the infinite potential, who is God, all-powerful. And another thing people like to say is that God can't act inside of time and space. And I would say, why not? Since he's the maker of time and space and matter and everything that's in it, but then he's all powerful. He made it exist. He can change what it is. He can alter what it is. He has that ability because he's all powerful. Because everything originated from him to begin with, so why can't he move and exist inside of time and distance? You can't put God into a box, and you can't keep God out of the said box either. So that's a pretty profound statement. It's an original jungle jargon statement, but you can't put God into a box and confine him and file him away in a box, in a file somewhere, and you can't keep God out of said box either. So, because he's the originator of everything, who caused everything. So that's basically what the logic is that everything has an ultimate cause, and the skeptics and atheists don't have an answer as to what that cause is. They would say, it's better to say, I don't know. No, if you don't know, then that means you can't tell me what the cause is. Because we do know what the cause is. It's a greater energy. It's a greater power. It's a greater knowledge. It's It's a greater understanding. It's a greater purpose. So we have the answers. We've always had the answers. You know, it was the people in walking around in goat skins thousands of years ago that wrote it down for us so that we could understand, because apparently our brains aren't that great. They're getting smaller and less intelligent all the time. So they're the ones that define God as all-knowing, all-powerful, and eternal. It's written. You can read it. It's written. It's written in the Old Testament. It's written in the New Testament. You know, he made all things, and he came into the world that he made. And there's a whole gospel of the fact that since we have a maker, we look to him for our salvation. He's the only one that can cover for us and provide us a way out to salvage what is ruined in our lives. So this salvaging or saving grace is also by the power of God, by the power of his true word. His word can redeem us and save us and give us new life. And everything is by the power of his word, because his word is powerful. His word is living and active and sharper than any two-edged sword. It's able to, cut you down and build you up. Cut your pride out and strengthen you and encourage you and build you up so that everything you say is true, which is his word. So everything that you say is his word and is true, and it's not a lie, so that you won't be ashamed and disgraced forever.